Although King Arthur is a popular figure today, did you know the first mention of Arthur is about 1200 years old? The Historia Britonum mentions an Arthur related to a battle between the Britons and the Anglo-Saxons after the Romans left Britain. However, the document was written about 300 years after the conflict. The legends of King Arthur we know today did not begin development until the 12th century under Geoffrey of Monmouth. Then, this British myth saw more development in France during the Middle Ages before settling into the stories we know and love today. Finding the true story behind King Arthur means examining murky periods of history like the Dark Ages. King Arthur is a much beloved character. He and his knights made Camelot a place of chivalry and adventure that continues to fascinate children and adults alike. The old stories of the Knights of the Round Table have been retold in countless books, movies, and television shows, and something about them continues to call to us today. Although King Arthur continues inspiring imagination, it is not known for sure if he existed. Some historians believe the character of King Arthur was based on a real British king, but the debate centers around which one. Early British history is filled with great kings who led their people well and fought to defend their homelands. So it's time to dive deeper into this chaotic time and look at two kings who could have inspired the legend of King Arthur. By examining these real kings, we can catch a glimpse of chivalry in the real world and see how King Arthur, while fictional, is still an essential part of Western history. Who was Ambrosius Aurelianus? Ambrosius Aurelianus is a famous character in British legends and myths, living in the late 5th and early 6th centuries. Sadly, there's not much historical documentation of Ambrosius Aurelianus, partially due to the time he lived. When Rome fell to Germanic chieftain Odoacer in 476 CE, Western Europe fell into the Dark Ages. The Roman Empire had ruled parts of Western Europe for so long that the loss of that overarching stability saw a sudden decline in written history. Germanic tribes were on the move, raiding cities as they went, so literacy fell. One of the people who wrote about the 5th century was Gildas the Wise, a 6th century British monk. His sermon, De Excidio et Conquisto Britanniae, was intended to condemn his contemporaries, but the first part of the sermon narrates how Britain went from Roman conquest to Gildas's own time, including the Anglo-Saxon invasion. Thus, he is one of the most critical sources of British history for the 5th and 6th centuries, mainly because he is a near contemporary to the historical events he discusses. According to Gildas the Wise, Ambrosius Aurelianus was born into a noble family and played a significant role in the fight against the Saxons, one of the Germanic tribes that began pushing into Britain around the 6th century. They arrived along with the Angles and the Jutes. The Jutes settled around Kent, and the Angles settled in the northeast and eastern parts of the island. The Saxons eventually settled in the upper Thames Valley, but these Germanic tribes did not settle peacefully. The Saxons, Angles, and Jutes found Britain was already inhabited when they arrived. Although the Romans had pulled out about 2 centuries ago, the Britons remained, and many of them were Romanized. Gildas the Wise mentioned Ambrosius Aurelianus's parents died in an early Saxon attack, which would have fueled his animosity with the Saxons. Ambrosius Aurelianus was also likely a Christian. Gildas the Wise mentions he won battles with God's help. However, some historians contend that Gildas's religion is shining through, so that statement may not accurately reflect Ambrosius Aurelianus's religious leanings. Regardless, he fought the Saxons for about 10 years, trying to push them off the coasts of England. Historians believe he was part of the Battle of Badon around 500 CE, although historians know little about it. There is little documentation about the battle, but in the little there is, Ambrosius Aurelianus is not mentioned as being directly involved. Instead, there's a mention of an Arthur in the battle, although this comes from the Historia Britonum, written in the 9th century, at least 300 years after the battle. Whoever Ambrosius Aurelianus was, he significantly impacted British myths and legends. It is unclear if King Arthur was fashioned after this great Romanized British war leader. However, many scholars agree that he eventually transformed into King Arthur's uncle and the brother of Arthur's father, who was named Uther Pendragon in literary tradition. Other scholars believe Ambrosius Aurelianus was transformed into the great wizard Merlin, who comes to Arthur to help him grow and become a successful monarch. Who was King Alfred the Great? Alfred the Great was an Anglo-Saxon king who ruled the Kingdom of Wessex from 871 to 886 CE, and all British Anglo-Saxons from 886 to 899 CE. However, when he was born, no one expected him to take the throne. He was born around 849 CE as the youngest of 6 siblings, several of whom were older brothers. He was a sickly boy, and many expected that Alfred would join the church if he survived to adulthood. Thus, much of his early education centered around preparing him for monastic life, so he learned the value of reading. As a child, Alfred even accompanied his father on a trip to Rome and met Pope Leo IV, although sources are unclear if Leo IV anointed Alfred as a king or a consul. Either way, Alfred's early years focused on preparing him for a life of study, even as the political world erupted into chaos and turmoil around him. When Alfred was born, the Anglo-Saxons had ruled England for several centuries. The Anglo-Saxons were known to squabble amongst themselves over land, but they soon faced a more serious threat: the Vikings. The Vikings launched their first raid on English shores in 793 CE, but their attacks soon shifted from raiding to invading. The Viking invasions were ruthless, and Anglo-Saxon kingdoms could not stand against them despite fighting fiercely. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms fell to the Vikings one by one, so many Anglo-Saxon kings frequently found themselves on the battlefield. Alfred's older brothers held the throne in succession. As they died one by one fighting the invading Vikings, Alfred moved closer to the throne. Finally, his last brother, Ethelred, took the throne in 865 and made Alfred his successor, allowing Alfred to work closely with him to run Wessex. For several years, Alfred and Ethelred fought the Vikings. Suddenly, when King Ethelred died in 871 CE, Alfred became the King of Wessex, which was soon the only Anglo-Saxon kingdom in Britain that had not yet fallen to the Vikings. Of course, the Vikings were not satisfied with holding most of England. They continued to press into Wessex. Alfred did his best to hold them off, but in January 878 they attacked Chippingham. King Alfred barely escaped with his life. Legends say he stayed a night with an older lady, who fussed at him for burning the bread, but Alfred managed to escape. He and a small group of men hid in the marshes of Somerset. It seemed the Vikings had won. However, Alfred refused to surrender. He rallied people to him in the marshes, and in May 878, Alfred left the marshes and launched an attack against the Vikings to retake his kingdom. King Alfred won the Battle of Edington and forced the Vikings to surrender at Chippenham. His peace treaty with the Vikings included splitting England in half, the Vikings ruling the eastern half called Danelaw and Alfred ruling the western half, and making the Vikings promise to maintain peace, which Alfred had to enforce militarily. Some historians believe Alfred's victory against the Viking invaders helped fuel the King Arthur myths. Much like Alfred, King Arthur was a protector of his realm from foreign invaders. Like King Arthur, King Alfred the Great was not only a military leader. He also cared deeply about his people and wanted to help them live better lives. To help the Anglo-Saxons, King Alfred the Great began working on reforms in almost every sector, including the military, the legal system, and education. The old Anglo-Saxon military system had left them vulnerable to the Viking invasions. Alfred didn't trust the Vikings to truly honor the peace treaty, so he set up a new system of defenses and taxation. His defense system was based on a network of fortified towns. These were called burhs, and may be where the idea of the modern borough developed. Each burh was about 20 miles from farms and villages and connected by a road system designed for the army. These fortified settlements had walls built or repaired and ditches added. Some burhs even straddled rivers to prevent the Vikings from exploiting them with their boats. King Alfred also focused on legal reforms by writing his own law code, drawing heavily on previous Anglo-Saxon laws. The laws focused on honor, but they also allowed most crimes to be compensated for with money. Alfred assembled his legal code carefully, focusing on justice and his philosophical ideas of kingship. His legal code was so important to English history that it would go on to influence English law in the present era. However, some of Alfred's most important contributions were in education. The Viking raids had devastated Anglo-Saxon education. Viking raids had destroyed many churches that housed important manuscripts, and people weren't focused on learning when they had to concentrate on survival. Alfred first focused on starting a court of scholars, but he was interested in educating all free men, not just the nobility. Because the Vikings had destroyed so many books, Alfred started a program to copy influential and historical works that he thought everyone should know. These books were also translated into English because Latin literacy was rapidly declining. The increased focus on education allowed the Anglo-Saxons under King Alfred the Great to recover from the Viking attacks and, some historians argue, even helped his kingdom better prepared to defend itself from future attacks. King Alfred thought kings were tasked with caring for their people. His dedication to his duty of helping everyone, not just the nobility, may have fed the King Arthur myths, as Arthur is depicted as a just king seeking what was best for his kingdom. The legends of King Arthur are some of the most important myths in modern Western history. They have impacted how people view a just ruler and how people interact with each other. Even though King Arthur most likely did not exist, and there has never been a real Camelot, two prominent historical kings could have influenced the legend's developments. Ambrosius Aurelianus was a brave Romanized British leader who helped push the Saxons back for several years. His life comes before the earliest mentions of King Arthur, and some scholars believe his life influenced the legends, even if he was transformed into Uther Pendragon's brother or the great wizard Merlin. King Alfred came later in history, after the first mention of Arthur, but his victory over the Vikings when all others had failed proved Alfred to be a strong warrior, just like King Arthur. Alfred was also dedicated to helping his people, instituting reforms that continue to impact Great Britain today. While historians may never know who the King Arthur legends are based on, we can still celebrate Arthur and appreciate how other real-life kings reflect the values of chivalry, bravery, and honor. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about King Arthur, check out our book, Medieval England, a captivating guide to English history in the Middle Ages, including events such as the Norman Conquest, Black Death, and 100 Years' War. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.